Hi, everyone.
Hi, yeah, hello.
So, and also thank you so much for organizing this conference. It's amazing. Thank you for bringing us together.
Yeah.
Let me see how I share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. All good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will focus on domestic uniformity using the example of a single outfit, a tracksuit, or perhaps what is more fittingly called a hooded sweatsuit. It's a clothing ensemble that has come to constitute my regular home or in homeware or inside clothing. And I'm going to describe the clothes, and I'm also going to describe the evolution of my own feelings towards it. So I'm taking a bit more of a subjective approach that I'm actually not used to, but it's just an item of dress I kept thinking so much about. And so there are clothes that I had perceived as ordinary and so habitual or routine that I never really thought much about them, but that had advanced over the pandemic to clothes I see now as distinct or maybe extraordinary, as I gained through their repeated wear a heightened awareness of them, and I actually started to despise them. So let me introduce my home uniform to you. What you're looking at here is a gray zipped up hoodie with a light Sherpa lining, and it goes along when I wear it with sweatpants of the same kind of a material in a darker shade of gray. And normally what I would wear with it is a striped t-shirt just to brighten up the grayness of the suit. So I perceive these clothes as comfortable rather than in any way presentable. And because of this, and also because I actually do not own a full-size mirror or larger mirror, I'm going to spare you a buddy selfie of me wearing the suit. These are not clothes that I've bought for aesthetic reasons. I've actually didn't buy them for myself at all, and I probably would never, likely never would. While I do like heather gray sweatshirts and hoodies, I do not like fleece or Sherpa lining, or so I thought, until these clothes came to me by way of accidentally shrinking them in the dryer so that they became defunct for their original owner, which is my husband and my sole pandemic partner. He's the one who had purchased these clothes to wear in the first winter when we moved into our new house. That turned out to be a very drafty one because it had old windows, and we felt the chill of the winter months in a very different way than in our overheated apartment we lived in before. So while I tended to freeze no matter what thick wool sweater I put on, my partner would praise this toasty Sherpa lined ensemble that made him not feel cold at all. So some days sitting freezing at my desk and working, I began to look for and adopt these items of clothing, and I started to like them. Not for their look, not for the way that they made me feel in any aesthetic sense, but for their practical use, for the essential feeling of warmth they provide. They're perfect for someone working at the desk and for long hours of writing at the computer. So I started to turn to these clothes over the past 2 winters on a routine basis, either as soon as I returned home from work or as I stayed home to work. They're clothes that turned into my habitual housewear, that didn't draw my attention, they go unnoticed, they are unremarkable. They're convenient, and in the German sense of the word, they are bequem. Similar to the word convenient that is derived from the Latin term convenieren, means to fit in. The German word bequem means suitable and also becoming. What do these clothes do for me? For me, they are not pretty clothes, but they are befitting. They're especially befitting and appropriate for being and working alone. They're specifically not for being in public or to be seen by an audience. They're not meant to mean or signify anything, except though that these clothes mark, embody, or materialize the boundary between the public and the private. Returning home from school, from an event, after moving around in the city and sitting on trains, sliding into these clothes is like stepping over the threshold from the outside into the house. These Sherpa-lined clothes are like a sartorial extension of the interior space that form a warming shell for my body, a house inside the house. And they even match the house. The color of these clothes I feel is non-disruptive. The shades of gray blend in and ultimately make me blend into the space, matching the color of the furniture, specifically the textile covered ones, for sitting and lounging, but also my work chair too is gray. As an opposite to streetwear, these clothes are also tied to ideas about hygiene and cleanliness, following the tradition of homeware or loungewear. They're not the historical representative kind of homeware or loungewear, or the ones that we saw in Caroline's presentation, or the ones carefully created as part of a careful total design in, for example, Van der Velde's clothing that he made for his wife to match her like an ornament the interior, but rather often these items of current homeware tend to be the ones that look more basic and worn and are often worn in well. They're soft from many washes and from many repeated times of wearing. They carry marks of time, maybe small holes, worn out cuffs, and bodily imprints and traces of habitual behavior that personalize such mass-produced clothes. They're meant to provide comfort and are often associated with leisure, or a slower pace of time. They're like a sartorial marker or boundary between the tempo of work and the tempo of the home space, distinct spheres which now during the pandemic obviously start to blur into each other. Now, as we're meeting over Zoom and colleagues and students enter our home space, and as we become virtually accessible 24/7, it feels like there is no physical transit or separation between the inside and the outside. Sophie Woodward has described how the clothes we wear act as frameworks to get ready and prepare for specific things to do. The act of framing is also an act of bracketing out. That is, for example, defining the work context as separate from and different from other domains. As we work semi-publicly at home now, these frameworks intervene so that home clothes suddenly may disrupt the temporal routine at home. The boundaries between public and private become porous. While I work from home, I have now Zoom meetings scattered throughout the day in which I find wearing my home clothes no longer befitting. So I need to dress presentable in the home, wearing clothes of a different kinds. The ones I habitually wear for work, such as a variety of black tops along with black pants, because I find it awkward to dress up just half. Yet for a good while during the pandemic, throughout March, April, and even May, my house was still cold. So in the off-Zoom time, but while I'm still on call for meetings, I switch between the types of clothing, wearing the Sherpa-lined hoodie over the regular top. It's a kind of sartorial mixing of time zones. Through the swapping and mixing, I become increasingly aware of these clothes that have been otherwise so easy and unremarkable for me during the duration of the last 2 or 3 winters. As the public enters the home space via the screen, these clothes feel less and less convenient, befitting, or bequem. I become aware of their appearance, like in the beginning when I thought I would never purchase them for myself due to the way they look. Moreover, with lacking opportunities to actually or fully alternate between work and home clothes without social occasions to really get dressed for the outside with different shoes, different jackets, overall a greater variety of clothes, I become hyper aware of the gray home garments. They feel monotonous, like a uniform I don't choose, but I have to wear by decree of the chill in my house. Sophie Woodward examined the way women use clothes to navigate between various roles, stages, times, and places. She has found that the homeware among her various interviewees is strikingly similar. She argues that women defer to such easy clothes like my house suit because they alleviate from the burden or choice that their wardrobe and the fashion market offer, and more so from society's demands to be or to look individual. Wearing the same is a response to potentially overwhelming variety of choice that takes up time and may cause stress. I feel the opposite now. As I have worn the same single outfit day in and day out, I yearn variety. I yearn to get dressed to go out for work. And inseparable from this, I miss being physically embedded in the social fabric, being seen and engaging with others beyond the view of the front screen, or front view on the screen. The suit I talked about is maybe a banal item of dress, but it is one that reminded me of the power of clothing, or the power of clothing has on us as we go about experience and organize our everyday lives. How long will my despising of these home clothes last? Will I throw them out? Will I now wear more presentable clothes at home? How will the experience of the pandemic impact my clothing behavior in the longer run? I'm not sure at this point. For now, the suit for me stands as a symbol of the pandemic. It is for me a material reminder of a time spent in physical distance from others and also often in anxiety that I cannot wait for it to be over. And yet now I likely have to adjust to it for some time. Thank you.
Heike, thank you so much for this amazing presentation and for for showing us into your homeware wardrobe. And yes, look, a very close look at the item, yes, which helped you survive through the quarantine. Yeah, any questions, comments? Well, quite a lot of praising comments, thanking you for the presentation and eloquent and fabulous. You know, I have a very quick question. Earlier today, Elsie Stjort spoke about also homeware and some interviews, and she also showed us pictures which showed difference between the domestic wardrobes women had to wear through the quarantine and also their dream garments they were willing and wanted to wear once the quarantine was over. Do you have anything like that? Do you have a fantasy of post-quarantine world which is somehow, you know, in a garment, maybe embodied?
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like I'm switching one uniform against the other, because even in my daytime I wear black t-shirts and black pants. So I was wondering, I've obviously, you know, started reading a little bit about how fashion will change, and will there be, like, after the war, a desire to dress up? Will I now all of a sudden dress in very different ways? I do not know. I don't have this. I like my regular clothes, which I don't tend to wear at home. This is such a practical garment, really, that, you know, I don't find aesthetic at all. But it has become now such a, I don't know, it's like a, you know, really charged with this time, and you know, and also, you know, to a certain extent, fear around the pandemic. I mean, my husband has now found himself to be an essential worker coming home, so you have to disinfect everything. It was just like this sense of, you know, keeping things sterile and clean. So it's just, you know, I've been thinking more about this item and my love-hate relationship to it rather than dream clothes. The good thing is the weather has changed. House is warm now, and so I can just wear t-shirts and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because here in Russia, for example, yes, well, one of our MA students actually did a very small research on Instagram images, and some images actually show the way some women, young women mostly, fantasize this post-quarantine world, and normally fantasize about wearing a dress.
Mm-hmm.
And we even called it post-quarantine dress.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, Elsa has a question to ask. Yes, Elsa, please.
Yeah, or more like a comment also to further elaborate on what you said, that, you know, since Woodward's study, we're a bunch of researchers who has done a lot of investigation of this space of the wardrobe. And the things we talk about is that the wardrobe is kind of a museum of self. It's kind of a self-archive, which represents, like a museum, a history of ourselves and the present and our dreams and aspirations for the future. And situations like this creates an extra awareness about this. So I just did a huge study on immigrant wardrobes, and of course what is special is that they couldn't bring their history. So they need to recreate all of these norms and ideas of styling and colors and dreaming about coming to Denmark and being a Dane and all of that. So it is in situations like this that it's really highlighting our relationship with what we store in our homes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
So,
agree. I mean, Woodward also speaks a little bit about this idea of, and other scholars, and Matalo, the sartorial biography,
yeah,
right? I mean, how, and so
yeah,
this very much connects to that. And you're right. I mean, I think it's just, I mean, I don't know if I would have thought about this item of dress that much. I mean, that's what I felt. It's like such a banal, mundane item of dress, but it just is charged now with very different type of emotions. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Heike, and there are some, yes, comments on actually presentation of the garment, and the shape of the body was captured very well in that photo, Heike. It's from Jana Milkumova Reynolds. Yes, Agatha says, thanks, that is a great insight into the haptic experience of clothing, not just the visual. Yes, today we quite a lot spoke about haptics and missing, yes, the touch, but at the same time, actually, yes, touching those clothes we normally do not touch that often. Right. Thank you, Heike.